Welcome to SOAR's Behavior Management Guide for Families series. We are doing this for the month of September. And today's topic is general strategies, maximizing the creative art of strategy. As always, we are thrilled to have you, and we are so thankful that you have chosen to join us for these webinars. The first strategy I wanted to talk about is the idea of thinking proactively. Remember to respond, not to react. And when I think about that idea, for me, the term responsibility, really, if you break that word into two words, there are two words there, aren't there? It's response, ability. And so when we are making choices about how we choose to react or interact with our kids, and we are choosing our responses, then we are being proactive about how we engage. When we don't react, we are moving towards a thoughtful approach to trying and achieve what we want. If you've seen my webinars before, you've heard the story of the in one cup you've got water and in one cup you've got gas. And so I've got, here I've got gas and I've got water. And so if I encounter a situation and I'm being, practicing responsibility and choosing to respond, then I douse a little bit of water on the situation and everything goes well. But if I make a mistake and I, in fact, end up putting a little gas on the situation, well, what happens? I get a flame. Oof. And then sometimes, we make the mistake. We thought that it was water, but it really turns out it was gas. And other times, we knew the difference. We knew that the solution was water, but we were frustrated and upset, and we decided to react with gas. Water, gas. And when you dump gas on any kind of a situation, what do you get? You get a fire. You get a mess. When you react, instead of making a thoughtful response, what do you get? You get a mess. And so tip one today is to be proactive. Practice response ability. You've also on numerous times heard me say that we really want to try and shape behavior by attending to positive behavior at a rate to 3 to 6 times that of negative behavior. And one of the ways that we do that is we don't just give general positive feedback like, oh, yeah, that's fine. We say, oh, that was a really thoughtful approach you took to that situation. I really appreciate how hard you worked on that, and I'm just tickled with the effort you put into it. Now, when you shape behavior, when you practice focusing on behaviors to that level, it can all be undone by going to the negative. Why did you do that? Clearly that was a mistake. Why do you have to be such a difficult kid all the time? And when you say things like that, if that's all they begin to hear, then they begin to believe that about themselves. But when you are giving them positive feedback, it becomes much, much easier to shape behavior because it's that old saying, you can collect more flies with honey than you can vinegar. Now, there's something really important I want to say about giving positive feedback, because positive feedback can actually be counter to what your goals are. So you have to be careful about what positive feedback you give. Carol Dweck, who has done some wonderful work on mindset, did a study in New York City, and what she did was she provided a difficult test to all, I think it was 7th or 8th grade students, and half of the students, she talked about how smart they were and how they aced the test and how they were the best and brightest. And the other half of the students, she didn't talk about the results at all. She focused on you gave great effort. You were, we really appreciate how hard you worked on this test, and we appreciate the effort you gave. They then gave them a more difficult test. And what do you suppose the result for the best and the brightest, the kids who we had focused on the results on? What happened in their much more difficult test? And the test was nearly impossible. Well, there was tremendous stress. There was a lot of, head rubbing and pencil breaking and just stress and tension. And the young men and women that were told that they just appreciated their effort, they just bulldoggedly bring it on. I'll take another test. All I have to do is try. Now, what's interesting was the lasting impact of that positive reinforcement, because 6 months later, they gave the original test again to those same group of students. And wouldn't you know, the results of the best and the brightest, their test scores went down from the first test. And the students who were rewarded for their effort and their energy, their test scores went up. And so sometimes positive feedback can actually be really, really devastating, especially when you are reinforcing things that kids don't have control of, like what resources they have access to, or how athletic they are, or whether or not they are handsome or pretty. But what can we control? We can control how much effort we put into something. We can control the energy that we put towards something. We can control how creative and how hard we tried. And so when you focus on those pieces that kids can control, and you give them positive feedback there, remarkable things can happen. And so it's really important, the kind of positive feedback that you give. All right. The next slide. You've seen this slide before if you've seen my webinars, and I really think that utilizing the concepts of choice and self-governance has been critical in the Wilson household, because we give our kids choices. And when we give kids increased choices, and we increase their sense of power, and when they feel like they are part of the process, it goes much better. In fact, just last night, yesterday, I said to the kids, okay, today we're going to go for a drive out on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and we're going to hike to a waterfall, and we're going to leave at 3. And my daughter said, well, I really like it when you give us opportunity to come up with things, or to have some choice. So I said, great, we're leaving at 3. What do you want to do? And her answer was, well, what you said was fine. But the point she wanted to make was that she really wanted to have the concept of self-choice and governance, because that allows them to be part of the decision-making process, be part of the problem-solving process, and actually engage in those decisions. And so when you empower kids, you create opportunities for them to feel invested. I think that you should model the behaviors that you desire to facilitate. There's a wonderful phrase I love: more is caught than taught. And there's also the idea, are you the sage on the stage, or are you a guide on the side? The sage on the stage will tell you all about it, but the guy on the side will kind of do some way showing and show you how something might work. Ask yourself this question: do you learn by having things explained to you? And the answer is no, not really. Most of us learn by mistakes, by failure, but also we learn by watching how somebody did something and then learning from that. It's why YouTube has been such a remarkable gift to the world, because if I don't know how to do something, I'll YouTube it. And so when you role model and way show, it goes much further than providing a oral explanation about how something should be done. And then I also think it's really important that when a mistake has been made, you can ask questions like, after things have de-escalated, well, how do you suppose I might have handled that? Or how do you suppose your coach might have handled that situation? And then waiting for an answer. Because it is in that processing of a situation like that that you find the most wonderful opportunity and the most wonderful nuggets, golden nuggets of information that then you can remind later and have them be a part of the learning process for these dynamic kids. I also believe strongly that we benefit a lot from modifying the environment. Consider modifying the environment to produce behavioral results. What are the environmental factors and triggers that trigger sometimes inappropriate behavior? What are the common distractions, and how do we eliminate those, or how do we overcome those? One of the battles I'm having right now with my kids is, at virtual school, is that they believe that it's okay to go ahead and do homework or virtual school in a prone position on their beds. Well, it is absolutely not, because and we had this conversation that when you choose to wake up early, get ready, have breakfast, you begin to trigger your brain to believe, okay, I need to move out of relax mode and into learning mode. And so creating a workspace that is different than your hangout space or your sleep space is going to be critical to your success for all of you folks out there doing virtual school. That's just absolutely important. Creating a different space, because that space creates that modification of the environment, which then triggers learning. I also, as I was exploring, modifying the environment, music. Now, music for my son is a terrible distraction, but music for my daughter creates focus. And so understanding how music can either create opportunity or create distraction is really critical. And what are some other pieces that do that? Fidget spinners. I was just playing with one here at my desk. Does it modify the environment and allows me to be successful and focused, or do I become too focused on the fidget spinner? I also am a huge fan of stepping away from a situation when you are getting angry or growing frustrated. There's a story that I will tell you. I titled the story, Dad Makes a Mistake. I have learned more about parenting from some of my mistakes than some of my successes. And I've been very open with you and shared those with you. And this is a story of my son, who is terribly impulsive, and also, as a younger child, struggled socially. So we joined the scouting program, and his troop had a father-son weekend camping trip at the local Boy Scout camp. And as with things, there's a bit of a jamboree, and everybody got together around a fire, and songs were sung, and there was announcements and a program. And we're in the middle of everybody, and my son is, not singing the songs, but instead just being a terrible distraction to me and to others around him. And so I kept trying to redirect him back to what everyone else was doing, and he just kept continuing to be unfocused and distracted and impulsive. I'm growing frustrated and angry because I know he's disrupting the experience for other kids and other parents, and I'm feeling some kind of way about that. And I'm also frustrated that he won't listen to me and comply. And so I whispered to him, if you continue to make noise and disrupt others, then when we get back to the campsite, you're going straight to bed. There'll be no s'mores. There'll be no camp out. And of course, he couldn't, his impulsivity had the best of him, and he continued to distract and disrupt. And so as soon as the event was over, we went back, and, by the time we got back to the campsite, Jay had forgotten all about the fact that, he had made a mistake, that he was in trouble. And then he got sent to his tent. And all the other kids are sitting around the campfire, making s'mores, continuing to sing songs, having fun together. And there's this lonely little boy across the way, and you can hear him sobbing in his tent. So I felt awful about that. I realized, the mistake I had made, and I crawled into the tent, and at least he wasn't alone. So where did I go right? Where did I go wrong in that situation? I love the story of that, because, well, every time I tell it, my heart breaks a little bit, because I just feel so bad for that little boy. But I also recognize that, And there's another slide later about consistency. You know, I followed through. I said something, I followed through on it. But I made a decision for him because I was frustrated and angry. Instead of, I had a variety of other choices I could have made. I could have just moved us to the back of the group where we were participating, but we weren't disrupting others. I could have chosen to engage him in a different way so that everyone could have had their experience and he, and I was meeting his needs. But instead, I put down an ultimatum and I created an impossible goal for him. And then he missed out on, and why were we there in the first place? We were there because my son was socially awkward and I wanted to give him opportunities to engage with other kids in a socially appropriate way so that he could continue to foster and nurture friendships. And instead of following through with that goal, what I chose to do, because I didn't practice responsibility, was move him even further, make him a bit of an outcast. And so those are the kinds of things that I think about when we make mistakes, when we're particularly frustrated or angry. Never take misbehavior personally. I am reminded of another story. A young boy was, he was at camp and impulsively he mooned somebody and everyone laughed. And because they laughed, he began to do that more often than he should. And so we implemented a behavior plan, but ultimately he did it too many times. And unfortunately, you can't have a kid dropping trowel at other kids, and we had to send him home. So I called his parents, and I called his mom, and she said, "Well, I'm working. I can't come get him. Call his father." And the mother and the father were divorced. The dad heard the story about what had happened and said, "I'll be there in the morning. I'll leave right now, and I'll be there by tomorrow morning." So we were here waiting for Dad to arrive, and I kid you not, Dad walks in, and he is like 7'2", and this little boy looks up all the way up at his dad. He'd just been suspended or expelled from camp. And the first words out of that dad's mouth were, he got down on one knee and he said, "Have you got a hug for your old man?" Because he knew that not to take this misbehavior personally. He knew that there was no way that his love and affection for his child was on the table. Instead, he listened. We talked about what it would take to be able to return to summer camp next summer and what he needed to do in order to make that happen. Side note, he absolutely did those things and had a wonderful session the next summer. But when you take misbehavior personally, you're really missing the point. When you take impulsivity personally, or you take even disruptive behavior, purposeful behavior, when you take it personally, you allow yourself to get sucked into the mix rather than taking responsibility and trying to find solutions to those areas of challenge. I really love focusing on your child's strengths. I would love for you to take a look at this list today and pick 3 or 2 or 1 even really wonderful thing on this list that represents your child. And in doing so, I would love for you to click it on the in the chat bar and tell us where you think your child major strengths lie, because I am such a fan of focusing on our kids' abilities, their strengths, and the gifts that they bring. And when I begin to focus on those strengths, then remarkable things happen. For instance, my son is incredibly tenacious. He will stick with something, and he's passionate. My daughter is a divergent thinker, and she's very quick-witted. And both of my kids are service oriented. So I would love to hear from my chat room and tell me which of these items you believe might apply to your child. Oh, Pierre, thank you. I agree. Your daughter is very creative, imaginative, and very passionate. Thank you so much. Do we have one or two more that are willing to share? Oh, Eden, thank you. Observation skills, sense of humor, and a caring spirit. Uh, Laura, your child is helpful and friendly. And again, when we think about our kids in these terms, when we focus on their strengths and abilities, it changes our entire approach and how we choose to pursue every interaction that we have with our kids.
We also had someone from Facebook, Jennifer, use the word spontaneous for her child.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. All right, so consistency or nothing. And I found this slide on the internet, and the reason I love the idea of archery is that when you are consistent and you do things the same way every time, you start to get similar results. So when in archery, if my hand is placed in the same direction, I put my arrow in the bow the same way each time. I pull back the drawstring the same length every time. I sight the bow in the same way and every time, and I start to get a nice tight group. And the reason that consistency is so important with our kids is that when they come to understand and appreciate and know what our expectations are, and they can count on those, then very much we create a environment that that allows them to be successful. If we are unable to do that, and each time we engage with them, something different might happen, then it's going to actually promote some of those negative behaviors. But if each time we react in the same way, then it's important that we find the same results. If we are inconsistent parenting actually leads to negative behaviors. And consistency in parenting, consistency in our approach, consistency in our demeanor, consistency in the way that we handle situations will create a much, much better platform for the kinds of behaviors that you hope to nurture and encourage. Routine is another one of those things. Do you have a morning routine? Do you have a routine for meals? Do you have a routine for how you do homework and other daily activities? Do you have a routine for bedtime? And when you create each of those routines, then you create this structure, and structure equals success. And so think about yourself right now and your routines. How out of whack are your routines? How mechanized and the same consistent are your routines, in that they're creating that structure that really helps kids thrive. I'm also a fan of choosing to ignore some behaviors or use humor to diffuse, and I'm going to give you a couple examples. If you can't, be careful to distinguish between humor and sarcasm. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a moment. But I had a counselor once tell me, if you can't convince them, confuse them. And so she would get kids that were engaging in some type of behavior, and she would say something like this: "Hey, you remember that time we saw the guy? He had the little monkey on his shoulder, and we handed him a Snickers bar. You were there, Jimmy, right? And then one of those little monkeys with the clapper comes the little stuffed animals with the clapper comes clapping by, and that, of course, that never happened. But the kids are looking at you like you've lost your mind." But you know what they aren't thinking about? They're not thinking about those behaviors or engaging in those behaviors. Now they're just trying to figure out what the heck you're talking about. If you can't convince them, confuse them. Sometimes when my kids are nagging me or pestering me or causing me frustration, there's a place I go. There's a hammock on a little island in Belize that I go to, where the sun is shining. There's a beautiful blue sky. I hear the ocean crashing onto the coral reef. I can even smell it. And so in my mind's eye, I just relax a little bit, and I go to that place where my kids can't get to me and continue to pester or frustrate me. So it's okay sometimes to ignore behavior. Sometimes you can choose to ignore certain behaviors because by engaging or addressing them, you're actually stimulating the potential that those behaviors will continue. And then I've also talked about how to embrace the no in terms of humor. My kid says, "Hey, can I go spend my daughter will say, can I go spend the night at Hillary's house?" I'll say, "No, it's a school night." But Dad, it's there are other kids that are spending the night, and then I'll say something like, "Oh, well, you didn't say that. Other kids are doing it." Well, then the answer is still no. But you can ask me again. Dad, look, we're all going to work really hard on our homework assignments, and I promise we'll get an A. Oh, okay. So if you do this and an A is guaranteed, well, why didn't you say so? The answer is no, but you can ask me again, and we'll play that game, oh, I don't know, through 4 or 5 cycles before eventually I'll get fine. Now, I think it's really important, now going back to that first piece, be careful to distinguish between humor and sarcasm, that if your kids don't understand sarcasm, and this technique creates a frustration point for your kids, then I wouldn't use it, because again, what I'm trying to do with ignoring these behaviors or using humor to diffuse behaviors is to soften the path and create less behaviors. I think it's important to keep the learning process fun. And one of the ways that we do that is we make it relevant. We empower choice when possible. We keep sessions short. We use project-based learning. We get outside expert help if we need it. We engage charismatic adults that our kids, are invested in and really appreciate and can learn from and seem drawn to. We create small attainable goals. And when we do those things, remarkable things start to happen, because we allow our kids to engage in these little snippets that lead to success. And what do we know about success? Well, success leads to more success. I am also a fan of setting high expectations. I love this cartoon. We pluggers never lower our goals. We just find ways to boost our capabilities. And so when I set high, lofty goals for my kids, not unattainable goals, but good, high, lofty goals, then they'll rise to the occasion. If I set goals that are too low, guess what? They'll meet them, but they won't exceed them. And so what I'm trying to do in my goal setting is to find that balance between not creating terrible frustration because I've set an unreasonable goal, but also not lower the bar so low that I don't draw out the best that they have to give. I think it's important to prearrange verbal and nonverbal cues to help manage behavior. Redirect with a simple touch to the arm followed by a nonverbal cue. And a nonverbal cue could be any number of things. I remember in college, we there were 3 of us living in this dorm room, and sometimes we needed time to study, and so we developed our own little nonverbal cue. You'd hold up a little pinky just like this, and that meant, hey, I'm trying to study. We all recognize studying is the most important thing. Is why we're here. Can we turn it down, or can we stop whatever we're doing so I can focus? Now, on occasion it devolved to this, but we created a nonverbal cue that kind of said the thing that we wanted to me, and we came up with it together. And so if you work with your child to arrange what the code is, let them be part of that. The more novel the cue, the more effective it'll be. Practice role play using it sometimes, and so they become to engage and get invested and learn and remember how to use it. Now, my family has a verbal code with me, which means, Dad, you're pestering me, and it may have been fun for a while, but it's no longer fun. Please stop. Don't, leave me alone. Because I don't hear no, don't stop. Instead, sometimes I get to being a little, I don't know, my kids said that I what is the term that they use? I have a tantalizing spirit, and so I kind of, you know, my inner Johnny comes out, and my 10-year-old comes out to play, and so when they don't want the 10-year-old out playing with them, they'll say Goofy, and originally was, you know, after Disney's character, you know, Goofy, and it would be Goofy's coming, and then it just got shortened to Goofy, and so when I get goofied, it means stop, desist, or there will be consequences. And the Goofy works really well for me. And each of my kids has their own code word or nonverbal cue. And sometimes, you know, with my kids, just a touch or a hug or a squeeze can be enough to kind of redraw and develop some focus again. And then I'm going to close with utilizing strategies would help to facilitate self-sufficiency. You know, empower choice, provide guidance and instruction. You know, create a safety network around your kid that allows them to be successful and to fail forward, to be able to fail but learn from those failure mistakes. Practice and role play situations, so that when it comes to the real world situation, you know, that they've done it before, they've practiced it, they know what they're doing. Create a view of what success looks like, so that they understand it. They can view from the cliff top above what it'll have been to be successful. Provide opportunities for them to practice self-sufficiency. Find ways to set them up for success. Now, this picture I have here of this young man rappelling off of a rock off of Star Mountain near in Tennessee. There's a couple of things I want you to notice about that. The first is there are two lines there. One of the lines is his rappel line. The other line is his belay line. And there's another person attached to that belay line. So that means that he's going to be able to go down that cliff on his own accord, but doing so in a way that still has some safety built in, a safety network for him. The other thing is that, you know, he's at a pitch and an angle that is going to allow him to be successful while he learns how to rappel down that rock wall. And then the final thing is, you know, there's immediate opportunities that he is going to have a chance to practice that, get down to the bottom, high five, talk about what worked, talk about what didn't work, and then come back up and try it again. Because when we create opportunities for our kids to be more self-sufficient, then they learn, they grow, they develop into remarkable young people who are prepared to take on the challenges that living with a learning disability or ADHD or autism spectrum disorder is going to create for them. And isn't that really what this is all about, is helping set them up for success? So, as always, I thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you, and will continue to provide wonderful opportunities this month to continue sharing with you the SOAR's behavior management guides for families. Next week's behavior management we're going to talk about individual strategies, customizing your connection. So please join me again next week at 2:00 for our continued series on SOAR's behavior management guide for families. I want to thank all of you for attending, and be well. This workshop, this webinar, along with the slides, will be up on the website this afternoon, and I look forward to next week. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.